It was a bright Monday morning at Jefferson High School. The big red brick building stood proudly at the corner of Maple Street, its tall windows shining in the early sun. Students were rushing through the front gate, some laughing, some yawning, some dragging their feet as if they wished the weekend had never ended. The sound of lockers slamming and sneakers squeaking on the hallway floors filled the air. It was just another ordinary day, or at least that's what everyone thought. Inside, the corridors were alive with chatter. Posters for the upcoming football game covered the walls, and the smell of freshly baked muffins drifted from the cafeteria down the hall. A group of cheerleaders stood near the trophy case, gossiping about who liked who. A few boys leaned against the lockers, throwing a football back and forth, even though the hall monitor kept shouting at them to stop. To most students, it was just another noisy start to the week, nothing special at all. Among all these voices and faces was Maya. She wasn't the kind of girl who tried to stand out. She walked quietly, carrying her books pressed against her chest, her eyes focused straight ahead. Maya was the kind of student who loved reading more than talking. Her notebooks were always neat, her homework always done. Teachers often praised her for being responsible, but most students hardly noticed her. To them, she was just that quiet girl who always sat near the window in class, the one who raised her hand with the right answer but never bragged about it. Maya's skin glowed warmly in the sunlight that spilled through the tall school windows, and her braided hair swung lightly against her shoulder as she moved. She had a natural grace, the kind that didn't ask for attention, but made people turn their heads anyway. She wasn't flashy, and she didn't care about popularity contests. She carried herself with quiet confidence even though she stayed away from drama and cliques. Her friends, few but loyal, often teased her for being too serious, but Maya believed in focusing on her future. She had dreams bigger than high school, dreams that went far beyond the small town where Jefferson High stood. That morning, Maya stopped at her locker, carefully placing her books inside. Around her, students rushed past, slamming doors and laughing at inside jokes. She wasn't in their world of whispers and gossip. She adjusted her bag strap and pulled out her English literature textbook, humming a tune under her breath. To anyone else, she looked like just another student starting her day. But there was a quiet strength in her that most didn't see. Maya had grown up learning not to let others define her worth. She was calm, patient, and carried herself like she knew something others didn't. As she walked toward her first class, she noticed a group of boys shoving each other near the vending machines. Their loud laughter echoed down the hall. She sighed softly and walked faster, not wanting to get caught in their rough games. She had learned long ago that it was better to stay out of their way. She didn't know that one of those boys, Tyler, had already noticed her. Tyler was the kind of boy people either feared or followed. Taller and stronger than most kids his age, he liked being the center of attention. He wore his cap backward, his sneakers untied, and his voice carried like he owned the halls. He had a reputation for picking on people, and no one dared to stand up to him. Some laughed at his cruel jokes just to stay on his good side, while others kept their heads down and prayed he wouldn't notice them. That morning, Tyler's eyes fell on Maya, and a slow grin spread across his face. He didn't know much about her, but to him, she looked like an easy target. Quiet, serious, someone who wouldn't fight back. Maya, however, didn't notice him staring. She was too busy thinking about the quiz she had in English class and whether she'd have time to finish her essay during lunch break. She slipped into her classroom, took her usual seat by the window, and pulled out her notebook. Outside, the school grounds were alive with movement. Students played catch, couples walked hand in hand, and the sun made the grass sparkle with dew. For Maya, it felt like just another start to just another day. She didn't know that by the time the final bell rang, her world, and the way people saw her, would change forever. As the teacher walked in and the chatter quieted, Maya opened her book and let herself relax. The voices in the hallway faded, the chaos of lockers and footsteps dimmed. She lost herself in the words on the page, unaware that her calm and peaceful morning was the beginning of something far from ordinary. It was the calm before a storm that no one, not even Maya, saw coming. Tyler's name was whispered in the halls more than any teachers or star athletes. He wasn't the smartest kid in school, and he wasn't the friendliest either. What made people know him so well was his power, the way he used his size and loud voice to control those around him. If you saw Tyler coming down the hallway, you either stepped aside or prepared to be embarrassed. That was the rule, and everyone knew it. He was tall for his age, his broad shoulders filling out his hoodie like he had grown up too fast. His sneakers always squeaked against the floor as if announcing his arrival before his voice did, and his voice had carried through the entire corridor, rough, sharp, always filled with some joke at someone else's expense. Teachers tried to keep him in line, but Tyler knew how to smile and act innocent just long enough to avoid real trouble. The moment their backs were turned, the smirk returned, and so did the cruelty. Tyler loved being watched. He craved the laughter of his friends when he made someone cry or drop their books. For him, it wasn't about hurting people, it was about proving he was untouchable. He had learned long ago that if you scare people enough, they'll respect you or at least pretend to. And for Tyler, pretending was enough. That morning, he leaned lazily against the lockers with his small circle of friends. They were more followers than friends, boys who laughed at everything he said and echoed his words like shadows. One of them tossed a crumpled paper ball at a passing freshman, and Tyler roared with laughter. The younger boy bent down quickly, face red, and rushed away. Pathetic, Tyler muttered, shaking his head like he was disappointed. His friends snickered, and one of them slapped his shoulder as if to praise him. Tyler grinned, enjoying the attention. That was the fuel he lived on, eyes watching, whispers spreading, people knowing his name for all the wrong reasons. Then as he scanned the hallway, his eyes landed on Maya. She was walking toward her next class, books neatly stacked in her arms, completely focused on her own world. Her calm, serious face seemed almost out of place in the chaos of the crowded school. To Tyler, that made her stand out. "Who's she?" one of his friends asked, following his gaze. Tyler smirked. "The quiet type. Easy pickings." The boys chuckled, already sensing what he had in mind. Tyler pushed himself off the locker and straightened his hoodie. He had decided then and there that Maya would be his entertainment for the day. Maya didn't notice the way his eyes followed her. She didn't hear the hushed laughter of his friends behind her. She moved gracefully, keeping her head high, her mind set on her class. But Tyler saw something else. He saw her calmness as weakness, her silence as an open invitation. He had made a habit of turning ordinary moments into spectacles, and he was itching for one now. He took a few steps forward, his sneakers echoing loudly against the tile. People in the hallway noticed. They always noticed when Tyler moved with that kind of purpose. A hush swept over a few students standing nearby. They exchanged nervous glances, already guessing what was about to happen. Some quietly slipped their phones out of their pockets just in case something worth filming was about to go down. Tyler liked that. He liked the anticipation, the way eyes locked on him waiting for the show. To him, Maya was about to become the main character in his performance. And the best part was she didn't even know it yet. He cracked his knuckles and smiled a slow, confident smile. "Let's see how long the quiet one stays quiet," he muttered under his breath. His friends snickered again, trailing behind him like shadows ready to cheer at every move he made. In that moment, the ordinary school day began to shift. It was subtle, like the way dark clouds creep in before a storm. Maya kept walking, unaware that her path had just crossed with trouble. Tyler's shadow stretched across the floor as he closed the distance. Students nearby went silent, some stepping aside, others leaning in closer, curious to see what was about to happen. The stage was set. Tyler, the self-proclaimed king of the hallways, had chosen his next target. And Maya, the quiet girl who simply wanted to focus on her future, was about to be pulled into a confrontation she never asked for. What Tyler didn't know was that by choosing her, he had unknowingly chosen the one battle that would change everything, not just for him, but for the whole school. The cafeteria at Jefferson High was always loud. The clatter of trays, the chatter of students, the smell of pizza slices mixed with fries. It was the heart of the school at lunchtime. Every table had its own group. The football players sat together, shouting across the room. The cheerleaders laughed in a corner, while the quieter kids tucked themselves into smaller groups, trying not to be noticed. In the middle of all this noise, Maya entered, balancing her lunch tray with calm hands. She didn't rush. She never did. Her steps were measured, her face relaxed, her eyes scanning for an empty seat near the window. The cafeteria chaos rarely bothered her. She had learned to live above it, like someone watching from a different world. To her, this was just another lunch break, another chance to read quietly while she ate. But across the room, Tyler's eyes locked on her. He leaned back in his chair, tapping his spoon against his soda can. His friends followed his gaze, waiting. They knew that look. Tyler was planning something. "Watch this," he whispered, smirking. Maya reached the edge of a table, ready to sit down. She carefully placed her tray on the surface and adjusted her chair. Just as she was about to sit, Tyler made his move. He strolled across the cafeteria, his sneakers squeaking on the floor, the grin already forming on his face. Students noticed immediately. The noise level dropped slightly, just enough for whispers to spread. In one swift motion, Tyler shoved the edge of Maya's tray. Her carton of milk toppled, spilling white liquid across the table. Her sandwich slid off and hit the floor with a dull thud. Gasps filled the air. A few kids laughed nervously, while others covered their mouths in shock. Tyler chuckled loudly, clapping his hands together like he had just pulled off the greatest trick. "Oops, my bad," he said, his voice dripping with fake innocence. His friends burst into laughter behind him, their voices echoing through the cafeteria. Maya froze for just a moment. The room felt heavier, as if every pair of eyes had landed on her. She looked down at the ruined meal, then slowly back up at Tyler. Her face was calm, her expression unreadable. There was no anger, no tears, no fear. She simply bent down, picked up her sandwich, and placed it back on the tray with steady hands. That silence, it was louder than any shout. Students who expected her to yell or cry were confused. Even Tyler hesitated for a second. This wasn't the reaction he wanted. He thrived on noise, on outbursts. He wanted Maya to break, but she didn't. She simply straightened her back, wiped the spill with a napkin, and carried her tray to another table. The cafeteria whispered with energy. Phones came out. Video started recording. Something about the scene felt different. Tyler frowned, his smirk faltering for just a moment before he forced it back onto his face. "See that?" he shouted to the room, pointing at Maya. "Doesn't even fight back. Too scared." His friends laughed louder, trying to drown out the strange silence spreading through the cafeteria. But Maya didn't look at him. She didn't give him the satisfaction of a reply. She sat down quietly at another table, opened her book, and began to read as if nothing had happened. The milk stain on the floor still shone under the bright lights, but she ignored it completely. That reaction unsettled Tyler more than he wanted to admit. It was like punching a wall that didn't move. His ego burned. His friends laughed, but he wasn't satisfied. Inside, he felt something stirring. Annoyance, frustration, maybe even a flicker of doubt. But he crushed it quickly. No one ignored Tyler, not in his cafeteria, not in his school. He leaned toward his friends, lowering his voice. "She thinks she's better than me. Let's see how long that lasts." The boys nodded, eager to follow his lead. They had seen Tyler pull stunts before, but something about this moment felt different. Maya's calmness wasn't weakness, it was strength, though Tyler was too blind to recognize it yet. Across the room, students whispered about Maya. Some admired her silence, others feared for her. They knew Tyler wouldn't stop here. This was just the beginning. The bell rang suddenly, signaling the end of lunch. Chairs scraped against the floor, trays clattered, and the cafeteria emptied in a rush. Maya closed her book carefully, tucked it under her arm, and walked out without looking back. Tyler watched her go, his jaw tight, his fists clenched. For him, this wasn't over. It had just started. And for Maya, the ordinary day was slipping further away, replaced by a storm she never asked for, but would face with the same quiet strength that had already unsettled her bully. The afternoon hallways of Jefferson High buzzed with restless energy. The lunch bell had passed, but students still lingered, drifting toward their lockers or whispering in small groups before the next class. The bright fluorescent lights hummed above, and the smell of cleaning spray mixed with the faint aroma of leftover fries from the cafeteria. It looked like an ordinary school day, but under the surface something darker was brewing. Maya walked calmly through the crowd, clutching her books close to her chest. She had already put the cafeteria incident behind her, or at least she tried to. Her mind was focused on her literature assignment, her thoughts racing with lines from the novel she had been reading. She wasn't the type to dwell on petty cruelty. She believed ignoring it was the best response, but Tyler didn't see it that way. From the far end of the hallway, he spotted her again. The smirk spread across his face instantly, though inside something sharp twisted at being ignored. To him, Maya's silence at lunch wasn't strength, it was an insult. It made him feel invisible, and Tyler Daniels was never invisible. He thrived on reactions, on power, on fear, and Maya had denied him all of that. His friends trailed behind him like a pack, whispering encouragement. "Get her," one muttered. "Show her she can't disrespect you like that." Their laughter followed, feeding his ego, pushing him toward the moment he thought he wanted. The hallway grew quieter as Tyler closed in on her. Students noticed. They always noticed. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, footsteps slowed, heads turned. A circle of invisible tension began to form. Some kids pressed their backs against lockers, trying to stay out of the way. Others raised their phones, ready to record. They knew what was about to happen. Maya reached her locker and began switching out her books. She didn't even realize Tyler was standing behind her, until she felt the sudden tug on her arm. The books tumbled from her hands, scattering across the floor. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Tyler's voice cut through the silence, mocking and cruel. "Hey, quiet girl. You think you're too good to talk to me? Too good to even look at me?" His grip tightened on her sleeve, pulling her halfway around to face him. His friends chuckled nervously behind him, their laughter shaky but loud enough to echo. Maya's eyes lifted to meet his. Calm, steady, unflinching. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply stared at him with the kind of quiet dignity that made his chest tighten. It infuriated him. He wanted her to break, to flinch, to give him something he could control, but she gave him nothing. The silence was heavy, broken only by the sound of someone's phone buzzing in the crowd. Tyler shoved her shoulder harder this time. Her back hit the cold metal locker with a loud clang. A few students gasped. One whispered, "He's going too far." Maya staggered slightly but caught herself. She straightened her posture, her hands still steady at her sides. She looked at him again, not with fear but with something else. Something he didn't understand. It was almost pity. That look made his stomach twist. "Say something," he barked, his voice echoing down the hall. But Maya didn't. She simply bent down, calmly gathering her books from the floor. The crowd watched, frozen, torn between fear of Tyler and admiration for her quiet strength. For the first time, Tyler felt a flicker of unease. Why wasn't she reacting the way everyone else did? Why wasn't she giving him the power he craved? He forced a laugh, trying to shake off the tightness in his chest. "See, nothing." "She's scared stiff," he shouted to the hallway, desperate for approval. His friends laughed again, but it sounded weaker this time, more forced. Maya rose to her feet, her books gathered neatly once again. She brushed a strand of hair from her face and walked past him without a word, her chin high. That small act, so simple, so quiet, was louder than any scream. The crowd parted for her as she moved down the hall, leaving Tyler standing there with his fist still half raised. The laughter of his friends died out. The silence that followed pressed heavy against his chest. He felt eyes on him, not with admiration but with judgment. And for the first time in a long time, Tyler didn't feel like the strongest person in the hallway. He clenched his fists, his jaw tight, as Maya disappeared around the corner. His pride was stung, his ego cracked. In his mind, this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But what he didn't know was that the storm he thought he was stirring was already bigger than him. And when the truth finally came out, it would leave him frozen in ways he could never imagine. The principal's office at Jefferson High had seen its fair share of troublemakers. The walls were lined with old photographs of graduating classes. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, and the ticking clock above the door filled the silence whenever things grew tense. That afternoon, the silence was heavy. Tyler sat in one of the stiff wooden chairs, his legs bouncing nervously, his arms crossed in fake defiance. His friends had been sent back to class, leaving him alone to face the consequences. He tried to look calm, even bored, but inside, his stomach churned. He had been in the office before, detentions, warnings, calls home. Usually it ended the same way. A stern lecture, a signed slip, and a free pass back into the hallways. Tyler had learned to play the game, flashing a smirk or pretending to feel sorry until the adults gave up. He thought today would be no different. Across the hall, Maya sat quietly in another chair, waiting. Her books were stacked neatly in her lap, her face calm as always. But this time, the calm wasn't just hers. The teachers had seen what happened. Students had filmed it. The story was already spreading through the school like wildfire. Tyler had gone too far. The principal paced slowly behind his desk, frowning. "This is serious, Tyler," he said, his voice low. "Assaulting another student is not something we can ignore. Your parents have been called. Maya's father, too. We'll sort this out when they arrive." Tyler rolled his eyes, pretending not to care. It's not a big deal. Just a joke. She's fine. But even as he said it, his throat tightened. Something in the principal's voice told him this time was different. This time he might not walk away so easily. Minutes ticked by. The hallway outside grew quiet as the school settled into last period classes. Then the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Slow, steady, purposeful. The office door opened, and a tall man stepped inside. His presence filled the room instantly. He wore a police uniform, dark blue and pressed sharp, the silver badge on his chest catching the light. His boots struck the floor with authority. His face was calm but strong, his eyes sharp and unreadable. The room seemed to grow smaller as he entered. Tyler's smirk vanished. His jaw went slack. The man walked past the principal without a word, his eyes locking on Maya first. He gave her a small nod, a silent reassurance. Then he turned toward Tyler, and in that single moment every ounce of bravado Tyler had built crumbled. "This is Officer Daniels," the principal said carefully, watching the two of them. Maya's father. The words hit harder than any punch. Tyler froze in his chair, his heart thudding in his chest. His mind raced. Officer Daniels. The name was familiar. Everyone in town knew him. He wasn't just a police officer. He was respected, fair, and feared by anyone who crossed the line. He had a reputation for standing tall, for protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, for demanding respect where others gave excuses. And now he was standing in front of Tyler. For the first time, Tyler couldn't speak. His mouth went dry, his hands trembled slightly against his crossed arms. He wanted to look away, but Officer Daniels' gaze held him like steel. "You thought it was funny to put your hands on my daughter?" Officer Daniels' voice was calm, controlled, but it carried the weight of thunder. "You thought no one would hold you accountable?" Tyler swallowed hard, but no words came out. The hallway bravado, the loud jokes, the laughter of his friends, it all vanished. He was just a boy now, sitting in a chair, staring at a man who saw through every excuse. The principal cleared his throat nervously, breaking the silence. "We'll discuss disciplinary action, of course, but I think Tyler understands the seriousness now." But Tyler didn't understand. He felt it. For the first time, fear was real, and it wasn't the kind that made others laugh along with him. This was the kind of fear that stripped him bare, showing him exactly how small he was. Maya sat quietly, watching. She didn't gloat, didn't smirk, didn't even look triumphant. She simply sat with the same dignity she always carried, her calm presence stronger now than ever. In that moment, it wasn't her father's uniform that made the difference. It was the reminder that she had always been stronger than Tyler could ever understand. Tyler lowered his head, staring at the floor, his chest heaving with shallow breaths. He couldn't meet Officer Daniels' eyes anymore. He couldn't meet anyone's eyes. The officer didn't raise his voice, didn't move closer, didn't even need to. His presence alone was enough to freeze the boy who had spent years making others tremble. And for the first time since the morning began, Tyler realized the truth. The storm he thought he controlled had just turned against him. Tyler had always thought of himself as fearless. Nothing rattled him. Not angry teachers, not disappointed parents, not even detention slips stacked like playing cards in his record. But now, sitting across from Officer Daniels, something inside him cracked. His hands, once so quick to push and shove, trembled slightly against his knees. His throat was dry, and for the first time in a long time he felt small. The room was silent except for the steady ticking of the clock on the wall. Tyler could hear every beat of his own heart, loud and uneven. His mind scrambled for words, some excuse, some clever line to brush it all away. But nothing came. The smirk he had worn earlier was gone, and no amount of bravado could bring it back. Officer Daniels stood with his arms crossed, his badge glinting under the fluorescent lights. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to move. His presence was enough. He had the kind of authority that made even grown men straighten their backs and choose their words carefully. And now all of that weight pressed down on Tyler. "You think strength is measured by how many people you scare?" Officer Daniels' voice was low, steady, almost calm. But every word struck like a hammer. "Real strength is protecting, not hurting. Respect is earned, not stolen." Tyler's lips parted, but his voice betrayed him. Only a weak, stammering sound came out before he shut his mouth again. He lowered his gaze to the floor, ashamed, humiliated, and for the first time, truly afraid. The principal shifted in his chair, watching closely. He had seen Tyler bluff through countless warnings, seen him roll his eyes and laugh off punishments. But this was different. This wasn't a boy facing detention. This was a boy realizing the world outside the schoolyard was bigger, stronger, and far less forgiving than he ever imagined. The weight of it hit Tyler all at once. His chest tightened, his breathing grew shallow. He saw flashes of the cafeteria, of Maya standing tall after he spilled her tray. He remembered the look in her eyes when he shoved her into the lockers. Not fear, not weakness, but something else. Something unshakable. And now seeing her father standing there, he understood. She didn't need to yell back. She didn't need to fight. She had strength all along, the kind that didn't crumble when pushed. And Tyler, he had nothing but empty laughter. The realization made his stomach twist. He wasn't strong. He was weak. All those times he thought he was in control, he was only hiding behind noise and cruelty. Now, in this small office with its ticking clock and old photographs, he saw himself clearly for the first time. And he didn't like what he saw. A sudden knock at the door startled him. The secretary peeked in, holding a stack of papers, but her eyes flicked briefly to Officer Daniels before she left again. Even adults looked at the man with respect. Tyler noticed it, and it made the shame burn hotter in his chest. Officer Daniels didn't move closer, but his voice softened slightly. "You put your hands on the wrong person today, son. Not because of me, but because my daughter doesn't break. You may scare others. You may laugh at their silence. But hers? That silence is strength. And you'll remember that every time you think about raising your hand again." Tyler's head bowed lower. His face burned. He wanted the ground to swallow him whole. For the first time, the laughter of his friends, the cheers in the hallways meant nothing. They weren't here now. They couldn't save him. He was alone with the truth. The principal cleared his throat, his voice firm. "Tyler, you'll be suspended immediately. Your parents will be informed, and you'll write a formal apology. This isn't negotiable." Tyler nodded weakly, barely able to breathe. The word suspended rang in his ears, but it wasn't the punishment that broke him. It was the realization that his mask had finally slipped, and everyone had seen it. Maya, still seated calmly in her chair, watched quietly. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply sat with the same steady dignity she had shown all along. Her silence spoke louder than anything else in the room. Tyler could feel it pressing against him, reminding him of the truth Officer Daniels had just laid bare. When the meeting ended, Tyler stood slowly, his legs unsteady. He dared one last glance at Officer Daniels, but the man's eyes cut through him like glass. Tyler looked away immediately, his chest hollow, his pride shattered. As he stepped out of the office, the hallway felt different. The walls seemed taller, the air heavier. Students peeked from classroom doors, whispers already spreading. The bully who had ruled the halls wasn't untouchable anymore. He wasn't laughing. He wasn't smirking. He was pale, silent, and broken in a way no one had ever seen before. For Tyler, this was more than suspension. It was the moment he realized fear wasn't power, cruelty wasn't strength, and silence could be louder than 1,000 jeers. And for the first time in his life, Tyler Daniels wished he had never been noticed at all. The next morning at Jefferson High felt different. The usual noise of slamming lockers and casual laughter was still there, but whispers seemed to run faster than footsteps. Students huddled in small groups, their voices low but excited. The story of what had happened in the principal's office had already spread through the entire school. "Did you hear?" He froze. "Her dad's a cop, a serious one." They said Tyler couldn't even talk back. The rumors painted a picture of the once feared bully as weak, humiliated, and powerless. For years, Tyler had been the one people whispered about. Now, he was the one being whispered against. Maya walked through the halls as calmly as ever. She held her books the same way, her head high, her steps steady. But this time, eyes didn't just glance past her. They followed her. Some filled with admiration, others with guilt for staying silent before. For the first time, her quiet presence wasn't overlooked. It was respected. Tyler, however, was nowhere to be seen that morning. His suspension had already started, but his absence only fueled the gossip. His friends avoided eye contact, their usual cocky grins gone. Without him, they looked smaller, unsure of where to stand. It was as if the throne of the hallway had been knocked over, and no one wanted to sit on it again. 2 days later, Tyler returned. Suspended, bruised in pride, and forced back into the school he once controlled. The principal had made it clear. His return wasn't a free pass. He was to apologize, not in private, not in an office, but in front of the very people he had tormented and mocked. The announcement came over the intercom just before lunch. All students, please report to the cafeteria for an important assembly. Chairs scraped, footsteps echoed, and soon the entire school gathered, buzzing with curiosity. Maya sat near the front, her face calm as ever. She didn't need the show. She didn't crave revenge. But she understood why this moment mattered, not just for her, but for everyone who had suffered under Tyler's cruelty. When Tyler walked in, the room went silent. The boy who once stormed through these halls with laughter trailing behind him now looked pale and small. His head was slightly lowered, his fists clenched at his sides, not with confidence but with shame. His sneakers no longer squeaked proudly. They shuffled hesitant across the polished floor. He stood at the front next to the principal, who gave him a firm nod. The microphone was placed in his hand. Tyler stared at it like it weighed 100 pounds. His eyes flickered nervously across the crowd, faces he used to intimidate, now staring back with a mixture of curiosity and quiet satisfaction. He cleared his throat, his voice shaky at first. I want to say I'm sorry. The cafeteria was so quiet the hum of the lights above could be heard. What I did to Maya was wrong. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't funny. He swallowed hard, his face red. I shouldn't have treated her or anyone the way I did. Gasps rippled through the room. Some students exchanged shocked glances. They had never heard Tyler apologize before, not once. His voice trembled with every word, but he kept going. I thought being feared meant being strong. I see now that it just makes you weak. I disrespected people to feel big, but I was small the whole time. His eyes briefly met Maya's. For a second, the boy who had shoved her into a locker looked more like a scared child than a bully. I'm sorry, Maya, for everything. The silence stretched for a moment after his words, heavy and unbroken. Then slowly the principal took back the microphone and dismissed the assembly. Students began to whisper again, but the tone was different now. Tyler wasn't untouchable anymore. He had been brought down in front of everyone, and the image he had built so carefully was shattered. As the cafeteria emptied, Tyler stood frozen for a moment, unsure of where to go. He felt the stares, the judgment, the shift in power. His friends didn't laugh, didn't cheer, didn't even stand near him. They slipped away quietly, leaving him alone at the front. Meanwhile, Maya walked past him calm as always, her books pressed neatly against her chest. She didn't look at him with hatred or triumph. She didn't need to. Her silence was enough. Her strength was enough, and everyone in that room had seen it. For Tyler, the consequences weren't just the suspension or the forced apology or the shame. The real consequence was knowing that his power had never been real, and now it was gone forever. The days after the assembly at Jefferson High felt different. The energy in the halls had shifted. Where there was once fear of Tyler's loud footsteps, there was now something else. Relief, almost like the school had taken a deep breath it had been holding for years. Students no longer walked with their eyes down, afraid of being noticed. The atmosphere was lighter, freer. Maya moved through the corridors the same way she always had, quietly, calmly, with her books pressed neatly to her chest. But this time her silence was no longer invisible. Students nodded to her, some even smiled. A few whispered thank you when they passed, though she had never asked for gratitude. She hadn't fought Tyler with fists or loud words. She had fought him by refusing to bend. That quiet strength had inspired others, even if she didn't realize it. Tyler, on the other hand, carried himself differently now. His swagger was gone. The smirk that once ruled the hallways had vanished. He still walked with his friends, but even they seemed unsure around him. They no longer looked at him like a leader. He had become just another student, stripped of the power he had once used so carelessly. For Tyler, the hardest part wasn't the suspension or the apology. It was the looks, the way people saw him now. He wasn't feared anymore. He wasn't admired. He was pitied. Every whisper reminded him of the moment he froze in front of Officer Daniels. The moment his mask cracked. He replayed it in his mind over and over. The badge glinting in the light. The calm but sharp voice, the way Maya had sat silently, stronger than he had ever been. That memory haunted him more than any punishment ever could. One afternoon, Tyler found himself sitting alone in the library, staring at a blank notebook. He wasn't there because he suddenly cared about books. He was there because the library was quiet, and for the first time he needed quiet. He thought about the words Officer Daniels had said. Real strength is protecting, not hurting. Respect is earned, not stolen. They echoed in his head like a drumbeat he couldn't escape. He looked around at the other students, some laughing softly, some buried in homework. He realized how many of them he had pushed around, embarrassed or mocked, and for what? To feel big for a moment? To hide the fear he never admitted to anyone? Tyler rubbed his face with his hands, ashamed of the boy he had been. Meanwhile, Maya never bragged about what happened. She didn't need to. She didn't walk with a new crown or demand attention. She remained exactly as she had been before, calm, focused, her eyes always on the future. That was what made her strength so powerful. She didn't fight for recognition. She simply lived with dignity, and dignity was louder than any fist. Weeks passed, and the story became less of a rumor and more of a lesson. Teachers referenced it quietly when speaking about respect. Students used it as a warning when someone joked about bullying. Tyler's name no longer carried power, it carried a reminder. And Maya's name? It carried respect. For Tyler, the greatest consequence wasn't suspension or whispers. It was knowing that he had been defeated not by force, not by anger, but by silence and truth. He had learned the hardest lesson of his life, that strength isn't about who you can push down. It's about who you can stand beside, who you can lift up, and how you carry yourself when the world is watching. And though he never said it out loud again, deep down, Tyler knew Maya had changed him. She had shown him a mirror, and the reflection forced him to grow. For Maya, nothing really changed. She still read her books. She still walked quietly through the halls. But now people noticed her. Not because she wanted them to, but because she had shown them what true strength looked like. And so, at Jefferson High, the story of the bully and the quiet girl became more than just gossip. It became a legend, a reminder that cruelty is loud but short-lived, while dignity, respect, and quiet strength last forever.